Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really getting into the heart of a core spiritual practice. It's central to Catholicism, this ritual around, well, admitting sin and getting forgiveness.
Exactly. We've got sources here that detail what most people just call confession.
Right, concession.
But, it's important to mention the church itself also uses terms like the Sacrament of Reconciliation or sometimes penance.
Reconciliation, penance, confession.
Yeah.
Okay, they all point to the same thing then.
Pretty much. Different names, highlighting different aspects maybe, but yeah, it's the same fundamental practice.
Got it. So our mission for you listening is to really break this down. We want to go beyond just knowing the name. We'll look at the why behind it, the theology, and then the practical side, the actual steps involved.
The goal is a solid, quick understanding.
So right off the bat, the basic idea. Confession is where someone tells their sins to a priest, asks for God's forgiveness, and crucially, receives absolution.
That's the nutshell version, yeah. Absolution being that formal forgiveness.
Okay, but let's unpack the core goal a bit more. The sources seem to stress it's really about healing.
That's definitely a major theme, healing the relationship, but primarily with God, of course, but also with others, with the church community itself. It's fundamentally restorative.
Okay, restorative. But that brings us to the why. Why involve a priest? Why not just, talk directly to God privately? The sources frame this as something mandated.
Yeah, they present it less as a helpful suggestion and more as something instituted by Christ himself. It's not just a human tradition that popped up.
So there's a specific biblical root for this idea of needing a priest to mediate.
There is. And it's pretty central to the whole thing. The sources point directly to Jesus giving the apostles the actual authority to forgive sins.
Ah, okay. Is that where John 20.23 comes in? I saw that referenced quite a bit.
That's the one. Right after the resurrection, Jesus appears to the apostles and says, and this is the key part, whose sins you forgive are forgiven them, and whose sins you retain are retained.
Wow, okay. Forgive or retain. That's strong language.
It is. And the belief is that this specific authority, this power, wasn't just for the original apostles. It's understood to have been passed down through the generations.
Through bishops and priests. That whole apostolic succession idea.
Exactly. So the priest isn't acting on his own behalf when he hears confession. That's a really crucial point.
Right. He's not forgiving because he's personally decided to.
Precisely. He's acting, the term they use is in persona Christi.
In the person of Christ.
Meaning he's an instrument. Christ is the one forgiving, but he's doing it through the priest and the sacrament. It's Christ's authority, not the priest's personal merit.
Okay, understanding that mechanism, Christ acting through the priest, that really shifts the perspective, doesn't it?
It does. It explains why the believer puts so much weight on this particular ritual.
Okay, so if that's the who and the how of the authority, let's pivot to the benefits. Why go through this? What's in it for the believer, according to our sources?
Well, there are several layers. The first, and maybe the most obvious one, is simply the forgiveness of sins. Getting wiped clean, essentially.
And the sources make a distinction here, right? Between different types of sin.
They do. They talk about mortal sins and venial sins. And this sacrament is seen as particularly necessary for mortal sins.
Okay, define those for us. Venial sin is what? Like a smaller offense.
Yeah, think of venial sins as actions that damage the relationship with God. They hurt it, but they don't completely break it, like maybe everyday failings, smaller disobediences.
But mortal sin, that sounds serious. What makes a sin mortal?
It means deadly to the life of grace in the soul. For a sin to be mortal, the sources say 3 things all have to be true at the same time.
Okay, what are they?
First, it has to involve grave matter. So a serious action, something that significantly violates God's law, like the 10 Commandments. Second, the person has to have full knowledge that the act is seriously wrong. You can't accidentally commit a mortal sin.
Ignorance plays a role then.
It can, yes. And third, there must be deliberate consent. It has to be a fully conscious, free choice, not something done under extreme pressure or by accident.
Grave matter, full knowledge, deliberate consent. All 3 needed.
All 3. If even one is missing, it's not considered a mortal sin, though it might still be a venial sin. But if all 3 are present, that's what breaks the relationship with God. And that's why confession is seen as essential to restore it.
So that's the primary benefit, fixing that broken relationship after a mortal sin. What else?
Well, flowing from that forgiveness comes spiritual healing. That's the second big benefit. It's about getting rid of the guilt, that heavy feeling, and finding peace of mind, like a weight lifted.
Makes sense. Clean slate feels lighter.
Definitely. Then third, there's reconciliation. This is broader than just being okay with God again. It's also about restoring unity with the church community. The idea is that serious sin harms the whole body of the church, not just the individual.
Interesting. So it has a communal dimension too.
Very much so. And finally, the fourth benefit looks forward. It's about receiving grace to resist sin in the future.
Grace, we hear that word a lot. God's help, basically.
Yeah, God's free gift of help. But here, it's specific. The sacrament is believed to provide a kind of targeted strength. It helps you fight against the specific temptations or weaknesses that led you to sin in the first place.
So it's not just forgiveness for the past, but also reinforcement for the future, like spiritual resistance training.
That's a good way to put it, actually. It strengthens your resolve, helps you grow spiritually, and avoid falling back into the same patterns.
Okay, benefits covered. Now, let's get really practical. If someone wants to understand this, they need the roadmap. You mentioned steps. How many are there?
The sources consistently lay out 5 distinct steps. It's a very structured process.
5 steps. Okay, let's walk through them. What's step 1?
Step 1 is the prep work, examination of conscience. Before you even go to confession, you're supposed to take some time, pray, and reflect honestly on your actions since your last confession.
How do you do that? Just think back.
Often, yeah. But there are tools. People might use guides based on the 10 Commandments or the Beatitudes or lists of virtues and vices. The point is to seriously identify where you've gone wrong, specific thoughts, words, actions, or omissions. It's about self-awareness.
Accountability before you even speak to the priest. Okay, step 2.
Step 2 is contrition. This is absolutely vital. It means being truly sorry for your sins.
Truly sorry. Does it matter why you're sorry? Like, am I sorry because I offended God or just sorry because I might get punished?
That's a fantastic question, and the sources address it directly. They distinguish between 2 kinds of contrition. Perfect contrition is sorrow that comes purely from love of God, regretting the sin because it offended him who you should love above all things.
Okay, that sounds ideal, but maybe hard to achieve sometimes.
It can be. So there's also what's called imperfect contrition, or sometimes attrition. This is sorrow that's motivated more by the ugliness of the sin itself, or, importantly, by the fear of hell or other consequences.
And is that imperfect sorrow enough?
Here's the key thing. Outside of the sacrament, imperfect contrition alone might not be enough for forgiveness of mortal sin. But, and this shows the mercy involved, the sources say that if you bring that imperfect contrition to the sacrament, it is sufficient. The grace of the sacrament itself helps to perfect that sorrow.
Wow. So even if you're mostly just scared of the consequences, going to confession with that motive is still valid.
It is. It's enough to get you through the door, so to speak, and receive the grace. It's quite profound, really.
That is reassuring. Okay, step 3 seems pretty straightforward. Confession itself.
Right. This is where you actually tell the priest your sins. The sources emphasize honesty and completeness, especially regarding any mortal sins you're aware of. You need to state the kind of sin and, if you can recall, roughly how many times.
Why the need to say it out loud?
It's seen as an act of humility. It breaks the secrecy and isolation of sin. Facing it honestly by speaking it is part of the healing process.
Okay, humility makes sense.
Step 4. Step 4 is the culmination. Absolution. After you've confessed and perhaps discussed things briefly with the priest, if he believes you're truly sorry and intend to change, he extends his hands and pronounces the words of forgiveness given by the authority of Christ and the Church. This is the moment sins are forgiven.
The actual forgiveness happens here. And then there's one more step. Step 5.
Yes. Step 5 is penance. After giving absolution, the priest assigns you an act of penance.
Like saying a few prayers. That's often what people think of.
It often involves prayers, yes, like Our Fathers or Hail Marys, but it could also be an act of charity, a small sacrifice, or something related to making amends for the harm caused by the sin.
So it's not punishment. What's the real point of the penance?
It's got a couple of purposes. 1, it's a concrete way to express your sorrow and your commitment to amend your life. 2, and this is important, it's meant to help repair the damage caused by sin where possible. It helps reorient you towards good and strengthens you against future sin. It's restorative, not punitive.
Repairing the damage. I like that focus. Okay, examination, contrition, confession, absolution, penance. That's the 5-step process.
That's the roadmap.
So, zooming out a bit,
Right.
why do this regularly? Our sources suggest it's not just for emergencies, like after committing a mortal sin.
Right. There's a really helpful analogy used. Spiritual health. Think of regular confession, like regular health checkups.
Preventative care for the soul.
Exactly. It helps you deal with those smaller venial sins before they build up and weaken you spiritually. It keeps you accountable, keeps you striving. It's about ongoing maintenance and growth, not just crisis management.
So it fosters discipline. What else? What are the longer-term effects or maybe character impacts?
Well, think about the process. Regularly examining your conscience, admitting your faults honestly. That requires and builds humility. It's hard to be arrogant when you're constantly acknowledging your failings.
True. Takes courage to be that vulnerable.
It really does. And that vulnerability, that honesty, it naturally strengthens the bond with God. You're not hiding. You're bringing your whole self, flaws and all, into that relationship.
Which I imagine leads to that peace we talked about earlier.
Absolutely. The cumulative effect, according to the sources, is a deep sense of inner peace and freedom. You're not carrying around the weight of unresolved guilt. It allows for a lighter, more joyful spiritual life. It's liberation.
Okay, this has been incredibly clarifying. We've covered a lot of ground quickly. If you're listening, maybe the key takeaways are, first, that theological basis in John 20.23, the idea of authority given by Christ to forgive through the priest.
Right, the in persona Christian concept.
Second, understanding that crucial difference between mortal and venial sin, especially those three conditions for mortal sin, grave matter, full knowledge, deliberate consent. That really defines the stakes.
Definitely.
And third, that clear 5-step structure. Examination, contrition, especially the nuance about perfect versus imperfect, then confession, absolution, and finally, penance as repair.
Got the essentials there. And maybe just a final thought to leave you with. Think about this. The act of confessing sins is incredibly private, right? It's often deeply personal, maybe even shameful stuff you're admitting.
Yeah, definitely.
Yet the entire purpose, theologically, is called reconciliation, restoring your connection not just with God, but very explicitly with the church community. So how does this intensely private act serve such a public communal function? That dynamic, that tension between the inner self and the outer community, it's something really interesting to chew on.
The private path back to the public hall. That is food for thought. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.